Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for EcoQuestions. This is being recorded, and we ask that everyone remain muted until it's time for the Q&A. During the presentation, feel free to type questions into the chat, and we'll address those at the appropriate time. Everyone who has registered for this session will receive a recording in their email, and it will also be available on our YouTube channel later. For those of you who are not familiar with the Metro Phoenix Ecoflora, we are a community science project that's documenting urban biodiversity using a free web-based platform and app called iNaturalist. Every month, in addition to the overall project, we have a new EcoQuest challenge, and these EcoQuestion sessions are presentations focused on that subject of the month. So tonight, in coordination with our April EcoQuest Lookin' Sharp, which is documenting cactus species, we have Dr. Tania Hernandez, New World Succulents cactus scientist from the Desert Botanical Garden. Tania will discuss the origin, evolution, and diversification of cactus, and a little bit about how we can learn more about biodiversity by comparing urban and wild populations. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tania to introduce herself and tell us about the prickly wonders we call cactus. Welcome, Tania.
Sorry, thank you very much, Jenny. I'm glad to be here. Thank you everybody for being here too. And I'm going to start sharing my screen to show some PowerPoint slides. And please tell me if you see them.
Yep, you're good.
All right. Okay. So I am brand new to Phoenix. I just started my position in the Desert Botanical Garden as a research scientist to study cacti, mainly cacti and agave too, but most importantly cacti. And I'm originally from Mexico. I performed all my studies in there. And in Mexico, you can find a great diversity of cacti, really, particularly from where I am, which is central Mexico. Everywhere you look, everywhere you go, everywhere you look around, you're going to find different types of cacti. I'm going to talk today about, well, I did my studies on the cactus family. My PhD thesis was about the cactus family in general. So I wanted to talk today about what we know about the evolution of the family and generalities about this plant family that is my favorite. So let's start. And this is not such a big family. It has about 1,400 species, around 1,400, 1,500 species. It depends. This number is very variable because there's a lot of people out there that like cacti, and people love to describe new species. And these new species described, they need to be assessed by experts, and sometimes the experts recognize the new species, but more often they don't. Or oftentimes, the same species is described under two different names. So the taxonomists, the specialists need to check those names, and oftentimes they merge those two. So this number can change over time, but more or less we have 1,400 species, and they are distributed. I'm not sure if you can see my pointer, but they are distributed in the American continent. All the American continent, you can find them from southern Canada to the Patagonia in South America. And there's one species that jumped the ocean and got to tropical Africa. It is this one you see here, down here. It is an epiphytic cacti named Rhipsalis baxifera. And this is a very derived cacti, like very recently emerged species. So we don't think, so recent studies show this is more likely a long distance dispersal, perhaps due to human intervention. So this we don't consider Africa natural distribution of Cactaceae, although the ancestors or the closest relatives to the cactus family do live in Africa. But Cactaceae is mostly a family from the Americas. All right. So how can we distinguish a cacti from a non-cacti? So this is the trait that is the most important. All cacti have this trait, which is the areoles. The areoles are these regions in the stem of cacti where the spines emerge. You can see them easily, and these are, we call them meristematic regions also, because cacti can, from these regions, cacti can grow new spines. They can also grow new stem segments, and they can also grow flowers depending on the species. So that's the reason we call them meristematic regions. And it is interesting because these spines, a lot of people think they are modified leaves, but we actually are not certain about that, because if you see closely to the early development of these spines, you never get to see, even in tiny, very early, minuscule, you need to use a microscope to see them in the areoles, and even the tiniest, youngest spines, they never show traits that indicate us that they are leaves, such as some pores or vasculature. So we are not certain these are modified leaves, but most people think they are modified leaves. Okay. So I said it is a family of around 1,400 species, and what I like most about this family is the huge, there's several things I like about this family, but one of them is the huge morphological diversity you can find in this family, and also that the modifications, morphological modifications that some of the members of the family developed or evolved are the most dramatic in the plant kingdom. Like, well, I love to use this picture here, this photo, to show some of the diversity in this family. So this was taken somewhere closer to Puebla, Mexico, in central Mexico. And you can see here, next to each other, 3 different cacti. So these 3 different cacti species, very easy to distinguish them. So we have a barrel here, and we have a nopal here, an opuntia. And then behind them, we have a columnar cacti, right? So these 3 species correspond to 3 different genera and 3 different, even to 3 different tribes, 3 very different groups within the same family. They are very different morphologically, and this family might be younger than many others that you can see also in this picture. For example, you can see Fabaceae here, or you can, but there should be many Asteraceae down here, or they are dry by this time of the year. Those are families that are perhaps, if not the same age, they might be older, but you never get to see the amount of diversity that you can see in Cactaceae. That's one of the things I like the most with this family. And also, besides the morphological diversity, you can see at a global level that this family also reaches high levels of ecological diversity. You can find them in many, practically in all different types of ecosystems. You can find cacti not only in desert environments, but you can find them in dry forests, in rainforests, almost practically everywhere you can find cacti. So that is also remarkable. So we think there are 3 major groups within Cactaceae. Some people recognize a 4th called Maigueñoideae, but most of us recognize three major subfamilies: Perezkioideae, Opuntioideae, and Cactoideae are the three major groups. And I put these pictures here to show some of the morphological diversity I was talking about. So we even have leafy cactus. So this I show here with an orange colored flower is Perezka, and this is also a cactus. You can have epiphytic cacti living in more tropical environments in Central and South America. This huge tree here in the middle, you can find these life forms or growth forms in Mexico, and some similar forms in South America. And you can have giant barrels. Sometimes they reach bigger sizes than the one I show here. Some of them might be my size, as tall as I am. I'm not very tall. And you can find also very tiny, diminutive cacti as the one I show down here, which is called Blossfeldia. And this one lives in the north of Argentina and Chile. So this is a remarkable level of morphological and ecological variation in the family. And then I'm going to talk about the evolution, what we know about the evolution of this family. And for that, I'm going to show the phylogeny. But first, some of us might be familiar with what's a phylogeny, but some of us might not be. So a phylogeny is basically, so this is an example for animals. A phylogeny is basically a graph, kind of a graph, that shows which groups might be more related to other groups. So according to this phylogeny here, all these animals share a common ancestor, and insects are the earliest diverging group within animals. And for example, monkeys, they put here, monkeys are primates, are more closely related to each other. And then the closest relative is rodents. And according to this phylogeny, the group that emerged, the younger group, or the group that emerged earliest in geological times, is the monkey and primates, right? So this gives us also a relative timing for the origin of these groups. It shows us who emerged first and who emerged last. So okay, so this is a general draft of what we know about the phylogeny of Cactaceae, of the cactus family. Sometimes we don't know who emerged or who diversified first, like here, like in Perezka. Perezka, we know that Perezka is a leafy cactus, and we are not sure which of these two groups of Perezka emerged first. We are sure that they are not a single group, a monophyletic group, but they are two groups. And then we have the open choice. And I'm going to show group by group and explain a little bit of each of those. So you can see what we know about the evolutionary trends of this family. So we think that the family originated around 30 million years ago. And during that time, the earth was, so the environments, the habitats, the biomes were not as dry as we see them today. World climates were more mesic, more humid. But that's where the first, like, let's say, the ancestors of all cacti emerged. And what happened at that time, what we think what happened is that during that time in the earth, it occurred a drop-off in CO2, in atmospheric CO2 content. And these plants, besides being very good at dealing with water scarcity, they are very good at dealing also with CO2 scarcity. So we think that that was the main driver for the origin and evolution, not only of cacti, but of many plants, succulent plants, succulent lineages similar to cacti that are very good at dealing with low CO2, low water environments, right? So the first group I'm going to show is Perezka, because we think these are the plants that more likely resemble how it looked the ancestor of all cacti. So this is how Perezka looks. As you can see, they are they look like any other dicotyledonous shrub or tree. They have broad leaves, broad photosynthetic leaves. Um, they look like any other. However, they do have, if I didn't put here a close-up, but they do have the areoles, which are the characteristic trait of the family. All of them, they have it. And these plants, they don't like very dry environments. This is where they can be found naturally. They can be found in more humid environments. If you see with more detail where they live in comparison with the climates in these regions, you can see that they don't prefer where there's more the more humid environments, where there's a lot of like this rainforest with a lot of humidity. They don't. They already are showing adaptation towards the most the driest portions of those humid environments or microhabitats, drier microhabitats. And at the physiological level, these plants already show some of the characteristic adaptations that succulent cacti have, but not all of them. For example, I'm going to tell you one example. For example, one of the particular traits that occur during the evolution of cacti from a leafy ancestor to a succulent one is the loss of leaves, and the function of the leaves was translocated to the stems, and the stems started performing the photosynthesis. So we can see some of the Perezkas are already performing photosynthesis in the stems, not all of them. So things like that, we can find traits like that. The next lineage I want to show you is Maigüeña. We are not sure about where Maigüeña should be in the phylogeny, because although it always, in all the phylogenies that people report with different sets of data, Maigüeña appears to be like one of the earliest diverging, also together with Perezka. Sometimes it gets closer to Perezka, sometimes it gets closer to all remaining Cactaceae. And the reason we are not sure is because these plants are very highly modified and adapt to a particular dry condition in South America. They live in very dry but also cold freezing conditions in South America. This is how they look, and they form these cushion-like life forms, so they are able to withstand extreme cold. So we don't think that these specialized organisms resemble what it might be the ancestor of all other cacti. These plants Maigüeña live in southern South America, and they can, so this is the data available in GBIF, but we know that they can inhabit far southern South America, in Patagonia. So the next lineage I want to show you is the Opuntioi. So from Perezka, besides Perezka and Maigüeña, we start having all the remaining cacti that all of them are highly succulent. We refer to them as highly succulent cacti, right? And thus we have first, I'm going to describe first the Opuntioids or the nopales, but they are sister to all the other cacti. So these are some of the drawings of a species in this lineage or in this clade here. I show it here, the opuntioid, and similarly as I showed in past slides, so we have groups, so these triangles here are showing groups of species. These are these triangles are synthesizing phylogenies that look like these, right? So if I were to put triangles here, I would put one here with this clade, which includes all the cylindrical stemmed opuntias. So in the opuntioids, the species group together according, more or less according to the stem form. So you have the cylindropuntias, and then you have other clade here showing the Tephrococcus and Pterococcus, which are more like these guys here. And then you have this clade of more formally known as the opuntias, sensu stricto, which are flattened stemmed opuntias. Opuntias are very interesting. This lineage includes a lot of species. They are morphologically very diverse, but they are also very cohesive lineage. We are certain that they are a monophyletic lineage, and some people even have proposed that this should be a different family because given all the diversity you can find within this group that I show here. For example, you have these flattened stemmed shrubs or trees. These trees can get huge sizes. You can have also, for example, the nopalea, which look like opuntias, but they have different flowers that are pollinated by hummingbirds. And you have these that we know well, the cylindropuntias, the choyas. And you have other forms like Tephrococcus from South America, and the Chiaventias, also an opuntioid. And I want you to notice here that some of these plants, they still have leaves. They still develop leaves. In the opuntias, in the flattened stemmed opuntias, you can see, if you get close to these plants, not all the species, but some of them, you can see in very young cladodes, early and tender cladodes, you are going to see small tiny leaves that are ephemeral. They fall down when the cladode grows and matures. And opuntioids, they are distributed also in the entire American continent. Well, not the north of Canada, but they reach this southern Canada. And as I said, this is a phylogeny that other people did. And as I said, they group in clades or in groups according to stem size, to stem form. These are the Myweniopsis that look like this in southern South America. Different from Mywenia that I described earlier. Mywenia is down here, as you can see here. These are Myweniopsis within the opuntioids. Then you have Pterococcus, the cylindrical stemmed, long stemmed in southern South America. You have the terete stemmed or cylindrical stems, and this group divides in two: the teretes from South America and the teretes from North America, which we know as choyas or cylindropuntias. And then you have a big clade of nopales, which includes opuntia and nopalea, right? And this group here, they can be found everywhere in the entire continent. And opuntia is a nightmare for taxonomists and for botanists because they hybridize a lot. So if you have a species and you want to look at that species genetically, you are going to find that this species perhaps comes from two different species coming from two different lineages. So we start, this is a very good example of what we call a reticulate evolution. And we require a lot of more studies here in Opuntia to understand the evolution in this group. But it's not only a nightmare for taxonomical reasons or for biological reasons, but also if you have collected Opuntias, you know what I'm talking about. It's a nightmare to collect them. All right, then I want to talk about all the other cacti, which are grouped together in what we call the subfamily Cactoideae. And this includes all remaining succulent cacti, highly succulent cacti that are not opuntioids, right? So we have two groups that I'm going to describe. The Cacti Tribe is sister to all remaining cacti that I call the Cork Activity. So this is a subfamily. So this here, the Cactoideae, I'm showing it here with this little arrow. I'm showing it here. This is the Cactoideae. And I missed something in my drawing, in my awful drawing here. There's one species that is sister to all these Cactoideae, and it is called Blossfeldia. This is its sister is the earliest diverging member of the Cactoideae, and it is a very tiny cacti I showed earlier in the presentation. It is a very tiny cacti living in northern Argentina, northern Chile, and this is something that happens often in the family. So as you can see in the phylogeny, it is the earliest diverging member, right? So you might think, well, this is how the ancestor of all Cactoideae might look like, or might have looked like, right? But if you go see these plants, these are very derived traits. The size and the fact that it doesn't have spines emerging from the areoles. And the place where it inhabits, like in very dry conditions. So we don't think this is a good representative of the ancestor of Cactoideae. So it might be the only survivor, the species that is the only survivor of a clade that was once more abundant. And so all the sisters, brothers and sisters of this species died, and she survived somehow. We have not a clear explanation for this, but this happens a lot in Cactaceae. We have no, we are missing the other species, such as to know what happened during their evolution, right? So I'm going to describe then the Cacti tribe within the Cactoideae, and this is where we can find Mammillarias, we can find Ariocarpus, Turbinicactus, all the small and big barrels that we love, Pherocactus. They are all in this clade. This is a radiation of cacti that occurred in mostly in Mexico here. So this is a map showing where is concentrated the diversity of this clade, the Cacti tribe. In red, we show places where it is most diverse, and in blue, where it is less diverse. So these species within this clade can be found everywhere in North America, but they are more abundant in the southernmost portion of the Chihuahuan Desert here, like around Guanajuato, San Luis Potosí, Querétaro. So if you start driving here and you get down the car, I don't know, every hour you're going to find different species. It's really astonishing, the diversity of these plants in this region. And of course, you have other centers of diversity, for example, in Baja California, but it is not as astonishing as in central Mexico. All right, and so interestingly, when you look at the estimated dates, so what we do with the phylogenies is that we use these phylogenies to try to estimate dates of origin of species and lineages, because we don't have fossil record for cacti or species. In general, the organisms living in desert or dry environments won't leave any fossil. So it's hard to know how old the time frame is, very hard to elucidate. But we use the phylogenies to try to estimate the dates. And we have seen that in Cacti Tribe, in the Cacti Tribe, you can find some of the youngest lineages. So they, what I mean is that they appeared very recently and diversified very fast. And one of the best examples is Mammillaria. So Mammillaria, which I show here in these pictures up left, and Mammillaria, we estimate that this genus originated around 2 million years ago, which is super recent, and generated a lot of species, like 140 species. So it's very astonishing, and we still don't understand how come these plants generate so many species that fast, given that they are such a long-living, long generation times plants. So next, and to finish, I'm gonna describe what I call the Cork Activity, and it is all the remaining like columnars and also globose forms living in South America. All right, and first I'm gonna start with the columnars in North America. So the columnars in North America are distributed in the Cacti tribe. Let me see if I can find the phylogeny here. Yes, so sorry, the order of my slides is not correct, but here is the phylogeny. So here, down here, it is where the Cork Activity starts. So we put sometimes these phylogeny get very large. So we draw these triangles to reduce the size of the phylogeny in some places. So it is easier to see particular clades or particular lineages. So here is the Cork Activity clade, but I am showing here the Cork Activity 1, which are the North American members. And the North American, this clade here includes the North American columnars, which are here, Cactaceae, they are here, but they are highly derived. So before them, we can find many epiphytic shrubby cacti. We can also find some smaller columnars from South America. So this is a region of the phylogeny we don't understand very well. We have not a clear idea of how come the North American columnars evolved or where do they come from, but we know that they are a very cohesive group of plants, of species. So here I show the earliest divergent members within this group, which somehow gave rise to North American columnars. And I show them here, like you can see, these are examples of South American shrubby cacti, like we have here Armatocereus from South America. We have here Hylocereus, which is the fruit dragon, Epiphytic Cacti. And you can have, this is a clade which includes many other epiphytic cacti, but we are not sure about this grouping here. There's a lot of uncertainty here. We have Epiphyllum, Disocactus, Selenicerius. Those all are epiphytic cacti. And somehow they are sister to all non-epiphytic columnar cacti from North America. So I put this message here because it would be very important to go sample South American columnar cacti to understand the evolution here. And then we have the Pachyceae here, which is the North American columnars. They are two clades, Pachyceae and Stenoceae. And here, let me find for you, Saguaro cactus is here. Is here embedded within all other Pachyceae. So some people think that Carnegie might be better described as another Pachyceae, but some of us think that it deserves its own name. And then you have all remaining columnar cacti that mostly live in Mexico, in the mountains. This is the map I showed earlier. Let me see if I find it. So this is a map of abundance of North American columnar cacti, and the darkest colors show where they are more abundant. So as you can see, in contrast with the evolution and the radiation of globose cacti within the cacti, like the other group I showed earlier, the columnar cacti, they prefer the mountains and they prefer the more humid environments in central Mexico and in the mountains of central Mexico. All right, and finally, I want to talk about the North American clays. And this is the part of the phylogeny showing the North American groups. And here is where we understand less about the evolution. We have very few samples. It is not clear if we don't understand because we need more samples or more data, like I mean more genes to look at or more traits to look at. But you can find within this clade also some epiphytic cacti within the Ripsalidae tribe. And here you can find the South American columnars, which are convergent life form with the North American columnars. Let me see if I have a picture here. So in one study we published in 2011, which is here, here's a figure of this, and we traced along the phylogeny, we traced the evolution of growth forms. We classified the species according to the growth forms, as if they are varels, if they are globose, if they are shrubs, if they are tree-like, columnar-like, and we estimated that the columnar life form emerged twice in the cactus family, once in North America and independently in South America. And this convergence is really astonishing. This one in letter A is saguaro, and this one here is Trichocereus in northern Argentina. And well, for when I give a talk and I use this figure or these pictures, it always works, but not with people from Arizona, because we know very well saguaros. So I ask, which one of these you think is in North America, which one you think is in South America? But people from Arizona, of course, can distinguish saguaro very well. But people not from Arizona, they have a hard time in distinguishing in between these two. So there's many remarkable evolutionary stories within Cactaceae. Okay, so one of the questions that are more interesting for me pertaining Cactaceae evolution is here. And it is, how come could you go from, how did evolution do to go from a plant looking like this, like a broad leaves, a shrub or tree, like living in a tropical environment? How come did you get to this one here, highly succulent, no leaves at all plant, and particularly in such a short amount of time. So I'm going to explain briefly what I mean with this here. So many things along the evolution of Cactaceae from a leafy plant like this had to happen to get to a plant like this one. Uh, Modifications occurred at many different levels, at basically at all organismal levels. Occur different modifications at the cellular level, at the anatomical level. So particular uh, cells, let's say, okay, so the cells needed to be modified to accommodate such a large back walls that accumulate enormous amounts of water. And if you have been in Arizona for a while, you know that we do have rain. It's not that the desert is all the time dry. We do have rain, and we can get a lot of rain, but in a very short period of time. So these plants need to be able to get as much water as they can when the water is available without collapsing the tissue. So they need to absorb all the water they can without collapsing that tissue. So among many different things, they developed a particular type of cells called wideband tracheids, and these cells can expand and contract without collapsing to accommodate that water. And some people think that this ribbed growth form can also help to that purpose, to absorb as many water as you can without breaking internal tissues or damaging the plant. They developed a particular type of metabolism, a particular type of photosynthesis that is very efficient in the use of water. And to be able to perform this photosynthesis, they need to have other different modifications. For example, at the physiological level, they need, so all the plants have these pores that we call stomata in the leaves or in the surface, which allow them to breathe. And in cacti, as in many other can plants, they open and close these stomata differently from other plants. So in any regular plant, stomata are open all day, but in cacti, stomata are closed most of the day, and they open them only at night. So you have basically a sealed plant that is not breathing during the day, right? So there's a lot of different modifications. You have also modifications at the developmental level. So these plants have very highly reduced, or they have lost the leaves or other organs. So this is what I mean when I say that these plants have the most dramatic modifications on the plant kingdom. This is very remarkable in terms of the amount of evolutionary modifications at all organismal levels that needed to happen to get to a plant like this. So this is just to show that there's a transition, right, from a leafy plant. So in the opuntioids, you have you still have leaves, but they are more succulent, and in nopales, the leaves are very tiny and ephemeral, and in the cactoidy, you don't have leaves. They are very tiny. We think they are there, but they are very tiny, and they can only seen in a very short period of time in the meristematic region. So this is a project we are working in the lab right now. We want to understand if succulent cacti like saguaro, if highly succulent cacti like saguaro, if they have leaves, and if they do, how how did these plants, how did they lose their leaves? So first thing we are doing is we are observing seedlings under the microscope, and we are trying to see if we can find these leaf-like structures because they have been reported that they are minuscule, microscopic, and they are very early lost during the development of cacti. And we did find them. So this is a close-up of one of these seedlings. So one very dedicated student came and caught the meristematic region of these seedlings, which is in the middle of the cotyledons. And she looked at them in the microscope. She made histological preparations and she looked at them in the microscope. And she did find these structures that can be differentiated from spines. So here you can see in these 3 different slides, you can see the spines developing with these long lignified cells, so they are broken, but the base of the spine is here. And then next to them, you find these structures that we think they are leaf-like. We think they might be leaves, but we can't be sure, right? They are not very frequent, and we still don't know if they are lost or they are reabsorbed or they fall. We still don't know what happened to them. We are doing observations, but next step for us is gonna we are gonna partner. We are going to collaborate with a group of molecular biologists, and they are able to use some techniques that allow us to see which genes are expressed here, and we are going to see if the genes that are known to participate in leaf development are expressed here in these structures. So this is one of the projects that are more exciting to us in the lab. So with this, I am about to finish telling you that cacti are not only pretty and beautiful to have, they are important important sources of information. We can understand a lot about plants. Uh, we need to understand more about how these plants do to survive in these environments. There's big efforts we need to do to preserve them and to stop losing species, right? So with this, I think I finish. Yes, thank you very much for listening to me, and I will take questions now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tania. The evolutionary modifications of cactus are absolutely fascinating. We do have one question in the chat. We have, is this diversity due to edaphic endemism or other environmental factors in opuntioids?
In opuntioids, well, it is hard to make a generalization because each group living in a different environment might have diversified for different reasons. As much as we scientists would like to find one answer for everything, so most likely each group of these plants diversified for different reasons. For example, the Nopalea lineage, the Nopalea genus, they have flowers that show a different syndrome. They are pollinated by hummingbirds. So it is highly likely that this group diversified due to a coevolution with the animals pollinating them. So for some other groups, we think it was the expansion of arid regions and the opening of new arid niches, particularly in North America, in the northeast of Mexico, southeast US. Sorry, it's always confusing to me. In the Sonoran Desert. Yes, different for each group. There's perhaps a better explanation if you go and see the habitat and with which other organisms they interact.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I know we asked this earlier, and I think it's your turn to answer. What's your favorite cactus species?
I don't know. I like cardon for the size of it. The huge size of these plants is always really wonderful to see. I love those plants. But I have many.
I don't think it ever gets old to see big, tall cactus. It's just, especially
yeah,
coming from a place with trees.
I guess it's the feeling like seeing a big animal, like seeing an elephant, or if you get to see a whale. Well, you need to go see cardon.
Yeah, and you know, we have a lot of big trees on the East Coast, where I'm originally from, and so to come out here and see a cactus somewhat large like that is really cool. So would you be willing to talk a little bit about the urban population genetic study? I know it's really early, but just some minute details.
Yeah, so we are very excited about this project. We are launching this project together with Ecoflora, and we basically want to understand the genetic diversity of saguaro in nature, but also we want to have sort of a census to count saguaros in the Phoenix area, and we want to genotype them. And by genotype, I mean we're gonna we're gonna take a sample and extract the DNA and look at the genes, look at the genetic sequences, and see where these cacti come from, where these saguaros come from. It is a very exciting project because it will help us to know if green spaces in cities and if people yards basically can be helpful, can function as a reservoir of genetic diversity. So saguaro is not an endangered species. We are just testing this idea, but many other cacti species are. And to preserve them, it is hard to preserve such a plant. We need a big effort, more than what a single botanical garden can do, and more than what a single nursery can do. So there's this idea that people could adopt a plant and help preserving this genetic material, because basically in your house you can care for this plant and take care of it, water it, and see if it is doing well, etc. So this is a great idea to involve people, and it would also be super cool to understand and to know where is your saguaro coming from, right? As with these projects with people DNA, that you send your sample and they tell you about your genes and where did you come from, your ancestors. That's similar to what we are thinking here.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. What can we do to help conserve cactus?
Yes, great question, because the main problem with cacti, the major threat with cacti is illegal trade. So people go into natural populations, extracting the plants illegally, and then they go and sell the plants. And that is the worst things to do. So if you go hiking to any place, please don't take the plants. Please don't take these plants to your house. It's better to leave them there. And if you want to buy cacti, please go and buy plants that you know they come from a nursery that propagates them, that they don't come from plants in a natural population. And it is very easy to notice that, because usually plants that come from the wild they are not as pretty. They are a little bit damaged. They don't look like perfect, right? So it's better if you have the don't buy those plants. You better go and buy from someone who is propagating them.
Yeah, and for more information about that, we actually made a post on Instagram and Facebook. I think it was yesterday. I'm losing track of time lately. April's so busy. But it's a really great infographic that has a lot of information about this exact thing and how to build an ethical cactus collection if you're interested in propagating and keeping cacti. I think that is all the questions that we have. I'm going to drop a couple of links in the chat. I'm going to put one to the EcoFlora website, as well as Tania's webpage on Desert Botanical Gardens. You can read more about her research. Tania, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and time with us. And thank you all for tuning in tonight. If you'd like to know more about EcoFlora or Tania's work, like I said, I've placed links in the chat. I have also placed a link to our other EcoQuest collaborator this month, the Central Arizona Cactus and Succulent Society. They aim to teach others how to grow and study cactus and other xerophytes, promote interest in these plants, and support conservation programs that protect them and their habitats. So you could definitely learn more about conservation from them. So the Society holds public meetings for study and to provide the opportunity to exhibit plants as well, which that last part has kind of been on hold pending pandemic realities, but they are a great resource and I encourage you to check them out. And I've put that link in the chat as well. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us and have a wonderful evening.
And thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.